Welcome to the place where fear finds you. So sit back, put on your headphones, and remember some stories don't end when the video does.
You ever hear those old stories about the Appalachian Mountains? People say there's something different about that place. Not just mysterious, strange in a way that doesn't feel natural. Quiet, but not peaceful. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're not alone, even when you are. Like something's watching you, listening to every step you take. The deeper you go, the weirder it gets. Locals have been telling stories for generations. Some say the land's cursed. Others just say it's old and wild and not meant to be tamed. But almost everyone agrees on one thing: there are parts of those mountains where people don't belong. My Uncle James used to be a forest ranger up in western North Carolina, somewhere near the Blue Ridge Parkway. He worked there for over 15 years. And the way he tells it, there's stuff out there that doesn't have a name. Stuff that doesn't show up on maps or in any official reports. James was always the quiet type, real grounded, not the kind to make things up. So when he told me this story one night, while we were sitting out on his porch drinking iced tea, I listened, really listened. He said it happened in the fall of 1997. The weather was just starting to cool down, and the leaves were turning. Beautiful time of year, but also the season when things start to feel just a little off. James was doing a solo patrol that night. It was late, almost midnight. He was checking some of the more remote access roads, places tourists usually didn't go. One of his stops was an old cabin deep in the woods. It had been abandoned for years, maybe even decades. No one lived there, and it wasn't on any public trail, so it was mostly just a place rangers checked once in a while to make sure nothing weird was going on. Vandalism, squatters, wild animals, those were the usual concerns. James pulled up in his truck, killed the engine, and stepped out into the crisp mountain air. He had his flashlight, his radio, and his sidearm. Nothing unusual. He walked up to the porch, which creaked under his boots. The cabin looked the same as always, all salt falling apart, windows boarded up. But just as he reached for the door to check the lock, he heard something that made him stop cold. A whistle, just one. Long, slow note, like someone whistling a tune, but only the first part of it. It came from somewhere out in the woods. Not close, but not far either. And it didn't sound like a bird or an animal. It sounded ... human. James froze. He waited, listening hard, but all he could hear after that was the wind moving through the trees. He turned around, shined his flashlight toward the direction of the sound, and called out, "Hello, anyone out there?" No answer, just silence. But it wasn't a normal silence. He said the forest suddenly felt heavy, like the air got thicker, heavier with every second that passed. Then the whistle came again. This time, it was closer. Same tone, same exact note. Still slow, drawn out, and way too calm for someone wandering the woods at night. That's when James felt it, this deep, gnawing chill down his spine. He'd faced down bears, mountain lions, even a guy once who pulled a knife on him. But he said nothing compared to the fear he felt in that moment. He stepped off the porch and started backing away, one slow step at a time. His hand was already on his radio, but he didn't want to turn his back on the woods. Something didn't feel right. The trees ahead were too dark, like the light from his flashlight didn't want to go there. It was like the shadows were swallowing it. He finally managed to call it in. Told dispatch he was getting some strange activity near the old cabin and was heading back to his vehicle. He didn't wait for a reply. As he turned toward his truck, something caught his eye. Just at the edge of the tree line, there was a figure. Tall, thin, not moving, not holding a light. Just standing there, almost blending in with the darkness. He couldn't see a face, couldn't even tell if it was wearing clothes. Just a shape, blacker than the night around it. James said he didn't wait to get a better look. He sprinted to the truck, slammed the door, and tore out of there so fast he nearly took off a side mirror on a tree. He didn't stop until he was miles away, back on the main road. Even then, he didn't relax. He kept checking his mirrors, the whole drive back. And when he got home, he didn't sleep. Not a wink. Just sat on the couch with the lights on, holding his dog and listening for that whistle. He didn't tell anyone at work what he saw, just wrote it off in the report as suspicious noises in the woods. But he never went back to that cabin again, not even during the day. Said there was something wrong about it, something older than anything he'd ever known, something that didn't want him there. I asked him, years later, if he thought it was a person, maybe a hunter playing a prank or some crazy drifter messing around. He just shook his head. Nope, that wasn't a person. People don't make the woods go quiet like that. People don't stand in the dark without breathing, without moving. And people don't whistle the exact same note, twice, from two different places that fast. I asked him what he really thought it was. He wouldn't say. Just looked at me with that same haunted look he had the night he told the story. All I'll say is this. He told me, if you ever hear a whistle out there in the mountains, one note, slow and low, ... don't answer it. Don't go looking for it. Just walk the other way and don't stop till the trees are behind you. It's been over 20 years since that happened, and he still refuses to go anywhere near that part of the forest. He's long retired now, lives in a small house near Asheville, with his dog and a shotgun by the door. Never talks much about his time as a ranger, but every now and then, usually when the weather starts to turn cold, he'll bring it up again. Just little things, a sound he heard while taking the trash out, a shape he saw at the edge of his yard, the way the wind sometimes carries voices that aren't there. I know, it sounds crazy. Maybe it is. Maybe he imagined it all. But I've known my Uncle James my whole life. He doesn't scare easy, doesn't lie. And when he tells you there's something in those mountains that we don't understand, you believe him. You have, too. Because the truth is, the Appalachian Mountains are older than most of us can comprehend. They've seen things, held secrets for thousands of years. There are stories carved into the rocks, whispered through the leaves, passed down by people who knew better than to go wandering too far off the trail. People who understood that some places aren't meant to be explored, not by us. So the next time you're hiking out there, and the air suddenly feels too still, or the birds stop singing, or you hear a whistle that doesn't quite belong, remember my uncle's words. Don't stop, don't look back, and whatever you do, don't answer. It happened in early October, back in 2002, not too far from Clingman's Dome, one of the highest points in the Smoky Mountains. The leaves had just started changing color, the air was cool, and the whole forest had that crisp, clean smell that only comes with fall. It was the kind of day that made people want to be outside. So a small family, mom, dad, and their two young boys, decided to go on a hiking trip together. Nothing too wild, just a simple trail near the dome, a popular area but with lots of quiet pockets where you could wander without seeing another person for hours. The boys were excited. The younger one, Danny, was 6 years old, full of energy, curious about everything. His older brother, Ben, was 9 and more careful, the kind who always looked back to make sure everyone was keeping up. According to the mom, Danny kept darting ahead, hopping over rocks and laughing like it was a game. They didn't think much of it at first. It was broad daylight. The trail wasn't too steep. They figured he'd stop when he got tired. But then he didn't stop. Ben shouted out to him, and the parents picked up their pace. But by the time they rounded the bend in the trail, Danny was gone. No footsteps, no sound, just trees, rocks, and quiet. They thought maybe he'd just wandered a bit off the path, maybe behind some brush or a tree. So they called his name, over and over. First with cheer, then with worry, and finally with panic. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then an hour. No sign of him, no laughter, no rustling, just nothing. The father ran back down the trail to get help, while the mother stayed behind, screaming his name into the woods. When the park rangers arrived, they brought dogs and formed search teams. Dozens of volunteers came to help. They scoured the area 4 days. They even had helicopters in the sky. Still, no sign of Danny. The strange thing was, the dogs couldn't catch a scent. They picked something up for a moment near a patch of moss off the trail, ... then nothing. Like he just vanished into thin air. People started to worry he'd fallen into a ravine or got dragged off by a bear. But there was no sign of a struggle, no blood, no footprints. Nothing made sense. It was like the forest just swallowed him whole. 3 days passed. By then, the parents were preparing for the worst. But then, early in the morning on the 4th day, Danny came back. He just walked out of the woods. A ranger spotted him standing near the trailhead, barefoot and covered in dirt, but completely unharmed. No scratches, no bruises, no signs of dehydration or hunger. He was wearing the same clothes, though his socks were missing. His face was blank, his eyes wide, like he was still half asleep. At first, everyone was overjoyed. The mom cried so hard, she almost collapsed. The dad dropped to his knees and held him like he'd never let go. The rangers tried asking questions right away, but Danny barely said a word. He just kept looking behind him, like he was waiting for something else to come out of the trees. When they got him to the hospital, the doctors were confused. His vitals were normal. He had a low-grade fever, but nothing serious. He didn't seem traumatized. In fact, he didn't seem much of anything. Just distant, quiet, like he was still out there in the woods. Even though his body was safe, when the parents finally got a chance to ask him what happened, Danny gave them the same answer every time. I was with the quiet people. No one knew what that meant. They asked if he meant other hikers or campers. He said no. They asked if they were park rangers. He shook his head. When they asked what the quiet people looked like, he just said they were like shadows, but they smiled. Now, kids have wild imaginations, right? So the doctors and therapists all said it was probably just his mind trying to make sense of a scary experience. They told the parents not to worry. He'd probably forget all about it in a few months. But he didn't forget. And he didn't go back to being the same little boy. After they brought him home, things started to get weird. At night, Danny refused to sleep in his bed. He would curl up on the floor, right under the window, and stare outside for hours. Sometimes he'd whisper to himself. The mom once caught him saying, "I told them I'd be good. I told them I'd come back." When she asked him what he meant, he just looked at her and said, "They're still waiting for me." He stopped playing with his toys, stopped talking much. He'd just sit on the porch and watch the woods. Even though their house was miles away from Klingman's dome, he acted like he was still right there. Like the forest was always just a few feet away. About a week after he came back, the mom found him outside at 3 in the morning. It was cold, and he was barefoot again, standing at the edge of their yard. She ran out and pulled him inside, terrified. "Danny, what are you doing? You scared me." He looked up at her and said, very calmly, "They were calling me. They want me to come back soon." That was the last straw. The family packed up and moved across the state within the month. They never told many people what really happened, just that they needed a fresh start. Years later, when Danny was a teenager, the mom said he still had strange moments. He'd wake up at night and go stand by the window. He never remembered doing it. He still wouldn't go near the woods, even when his friends invited him camping. He said he didn't want to accidentally hear the call. There's a theory some folks talk about forest folk. They call them beings that live deep in the Appalachians, not quite human, not quite spirit. Something old, something quiet. They say if you see them or worse, if they choose you, you don't ever fully come back. You might look the same, but you're different. Like a part of you is still theirs. Some believe Danny was taken, Not kidnapped, not harmed, just ... borrowed. And when he was returned, he wasn't exactly the same. I don't know what really happened out there. Maybe it was just a lost kid who made up stories to cope. Maybe the mind plays tricks when you're scared. But I've hiked all over those mountains, and I can tell you this. Sometimes you get this feeling, deep in your gut, like something is watching you. Not a bear, not a person, something older, quieter, smiling from the shadows. And if you ever hear a voice that sounds like it's calling your name from deep in the trees, don't follow it. There's this story I heard once, and at first I thought it was just one of those weird internet rumors. You know, the type some Reddit post, or a creepy YouTube video trying to freak people out. But then I heard it again from someone I actually know, and then a park ranger brought it up, off the record, when he'd had a few drinks. And then another hiker swore she saw the same thing. That's when I started believing it. They say if you go deep enough into the Appalachian Mountains, far off any marked trail, you might come across something strange. A staircase, just standing there, all by itself, in the middle of the forest. No buildings nearby, no foundations, no walls, just a staircase that goes up into nothing. It sounds ridiculous, I know, but the stories are all the same sometimes. It's wood, other times it's metal, or even old stone. Some look broken and weathered, like they've been there for 100 years. Others look like they were just built yesterday, clean, perfect, out of place. And the one thing everyone agrees on is this: you're not supposed to climb them. That's the rule. If you see a staircase in the woods, don't go near it, don't touch it, don't ask why it's there. Just turn around and walk the other way. There was this guy named Eric. He was in his late 30s, worked from home, and used hiking as a way to clear his head. He liked to go solo, said it helped him think better. He'd done most of the trails in Shenandoah Valley and started exploring deeper into lesser-known areas. Not quite bushwhacking, but close. One morning, he set out with his usual gear backpack, GPS, satellite phone, snacks, water, everything he needed for a day hike. About 4 hours in, he found something odd. He'd taken a small deer path off the main trail, trying to reach a ridge he hadn't visited before. That's when he saw it. A staircase, just sitting there in a clearing, surrounded by trees. He said it was the weirdest thing. It was white, bright white, with no dirt or leaves on it, like it had just been scrubbed clean. Wooden, but not rotted. No signs of animals or weathering, just ... perfect. He walked around it a few times, expecting to see an old house foundation, or something that made sense. But there was nothing. The ground was flat. No ruins, no stone, no debris, just that staircase, standing on its own. He should have left. That's what he tells people now. But back then, his curiosity got the better of him. He figured it was probably some old ranger tower or a weird art installation. He took a few photos. Then he did what nobody should ever do. He climbed it. He said the second his foot touched the third step, everything went quiet. Not just the birds, everything. The wind, the insects, even the rustling of leaves stopped. It was like someone hit the mute button on the entire forest. By the time he reached the top step, his ears were ringing. Not loudly, but enough to feel pressure, like being underwater. And the trees around him looked different, taller, darker, like they were watching him. He tried to look around, but he suddenly got dizzy. He blinked and, the next thing he knew, he was lying on the ground at the base of the stairs. Hours had passed. His watch said he'd only been out for about 10 minutes, but the sun was low in the sky now. His GPS wouldn't turn on. His phone was dead. He had backup batteries in his bag, but they didn't help. Everything just stopped working. He got out of there fast, but the forest didn't feel right anymore. The trail back seemed ... off, like it kept shifting. He swore the trees were in different places than before. Familiar landmarks were gone. At one point, He said he heard something behind him like footsteps, but soft, dragging footsteps. When he turned around, nothing was there. But the forest was still completely silent, like it was holding its breath. When he finally made it back to his truck, he found deep scratches along the driver's side door. 3 long marks, straight down the paint, as if something had clawed it. He didn't see or hear anything after that, but for weeks afterward, he said he had nightmares about stairs. Dreams where he'd wake up at the top of one, in total darkness, and hear something breathing beneath him. Close, hungry, patient. He never went hiking alone again. Doesn't talk about it much now unless he's drinking. And when he does bring it up, he always ends with the same warning. If you ever see stairs in the woods, no matter how normal they look, just leave. They're not for us. There are other stories too. A college student out near Roan Mountain swore he and his friends found one that went up about 20 feet. They all thought it was hilarious, took selfies, messed around, climbed it like it was a jungle gym. But later that night, one of the guys started screaming in his sleep. He couldn't wake up. His eyes were open, but he was trapped in something. His words, not mine. Said it felt like falling, but never hitting the ground. He kept repeating the same thing. They're underneath us. They're underneath. He dropped out the next semester. Nobody knows where he went. Just disappeared. There's even a story from an old ranger who worked near Mount Mitchell. He said sometimes, when the fog rolls in thick and fast, you'll spot shapes out in the mist. Tall ones, like pillars or columns. Some say those are stairs, too, just hidden, covered by time, or cloaked by something older than we can understand. No, it sounds crazy. I really do. But the thing is, these stories keep showing up. People from different states, different ages, different times of year, all describing the same thing. A staircase, alone, silent, waiting. Some believe it's a leftover from something ancient, maybe even supernatural. Others say it's like a trap, something left out to see who's dumb or unlucky enough to climb it. And the ones who do, they come back wrong. Or not at all. The forests in the Appalachians are deep, unmapped in some places. People have gone missing there for centuries. Some bodies are never found. Some show up in places they were never supposed to be. There's no solid explanation, but ask the locals. Ask the old-timers. They'll tell you. There are parts of those woods you don't go into, places where the wind doesn't blow right, where your compass spins wild, and where the trees grow around things that shouldn't be there. So if you ever find yourself deep in the mountains, far from cell signal and other people, and you come across a clearing with something that doesn't belong, like a staircase that rises into the air and leads nowhere, do yourself a favor. Don't get curious. Don't be brave. Just turn around and leave. Some doors are better left unopened, and some stairs should never be climbed.